Going to go live with the Rascal today. Go, Jamie Rascal.
As soon as the act goes into effect, I hope that all of the provisions will begin to work. I know that those who've been blaming President Biden for the inflation going up are now giving President Biden all the credit for inflation going down.
Okay, folks, that's Jamie the Rascal Raskin there, claiming that inflation is going down. That is an absolute falsehood. Inflation remains steady at an annual rate of 8.5%. It is neither going down nor going up. It is holding steady at 8.5. We talked about this a couple days ago. That's like your house is getting flooded and the water level is staying consistent. Now, it's good news in the sense it's not going up. That would be bad, but it's not good news. Anyway, we're going to get back to the Rascal in a moment. But welcome to GAMcast, August 16th, 2022, cloudy day in Atlanta. Got a lot to get to. We're going to do some Warrant Gate stuff. We don't want to do Warrant Gate, but it's just unbelievable. People keep saying that somehow this is good for Republicans. We're going to debunk that. We're going to cover the passport issue, which is, again, just another lie on behalf of them. We're going to get to Republican fundraising, Minneapolis racism, CDC guidelines, LA County recall ballots, approximately 200,000 ballots that are pro-GOP, anti a Democrat prosecutor, somehow are not going to be counted. Imagine if it were the other way around. All right, folks, I got a lot to get to, but before I do that, let me apologize. Yesterday, I did cut the show a little too quick, so that's one of the reasons Rascal is up. I started with the token yesterday, or ended with the token yesterday. Basically, even CBS was going, hey, isn't it kind of Orwellian to call this the Inflation Reduction Act? And it's not going to deflate inflation at all. And she just hemmed and hawed. And it's sort of, at this point, it's almost picking on her. I mean, she's obviously in over her head. But the Rascal's going to do the same thing, and we're going to get into that. But the point of all this is, folks, even the Democrats now basically sort of admit that the Inflation Reduction Act wasn't about reducing inflation. And the reason that's sort of important, it's not really important, because until the media starts doing this stuff before they've signed on the dotted line, before they've passed all these powers, it really doesn't do us much good. And so now, sort of belatedly, they're coming around, asking these questions and sort of pointing this stuff out when they really should have been doing it before the bill was passed. And again, this has been a long-term thing that the Democrats have been doing pretty much ever since Nancy Pelosi took over the House in 2006. And, you know, this is, again, they've been on a steady line towards fascism, towards communism, towards these sort of, you know, banana republic procedures that we only used to see in other countries, and we used to sort of shake our heads. How could anybody do that? It's now here, folks, and it's not anywhere going away. But this isn't the first time. You could literally look at, and I'm not going to do it today live. I don't have time to do it. Sometimes I'll do this stuff in person. That's part of the reason why we wanted to go video, is that you can see me do it in person and show you. Well, you'd have to take my word for it. I didn't do it before I went live. But anyway, you could literally go to Google and put in acts passed by House and literally look at the names of them, and every one of them are just ridiculous things like Make the Great American Male 10 Feet Tall Act. And you're like, but that you can't even do that, right? But that's just kind of the nonsense that we've gotten into in our culture and our politics. And it doesn't look like it's going away anyway anytime soon, because we're probably second up now is going to be Warrant Gate or Passport Gate, depending on how you want to look at it. Let's go ahead and finish with Jamie the Rascal. So first he says, you know, he was blamed when it went up. Now that it's going down, which is a lie, it's not. He should get the credit. Well, it's not going to go down, so there's no credit to worry about it. But that's fine. Let's keep the standard the same. And then he's asked this. Take a listen.
So we're moving things in the right direction already.
Yeah, and what parts of the bill do you think will quickly work on that specifically?
Next question.
Now, look, next question. Look, folks, guys like, and I want you to understand how this works. I talk about this all the time. A lot of people never heard of Jamie Raskin until really impeachment, maybe if you followed impeachment closely, which I did, of course, or the January 6th committee, which, of course, we follow that closely, and that's where he's come up. But he was just elected. I think he was elected in, I believe it was 2016, I'm sorry, 18. But he is one of these people. He's one of these new Democrats. He's all he's interested in is getting his hands on the power. Then he plays the narrative game 24/7, 365. He's enabled by the media so he can go up and enrich his friends, get campaign contributions, and steal your power. That's all he's about. And again, if he were ever, he couldn't exist. This creature could not exist in a rule of law constitutional republic that we used to have, maybe even 15, 16 years ago, we still had it. No way he could get away with that. He needs a falling press that will not ask him any questions. He needs a public that is frankly a little bit numbed and not really paying attention, which is regrettable because, eventually they're going to come around, they're going to get to you, and then you're going to realize it was too late. So, all right, yesterday I think I reported that as part of the documents they took in the raid were the passport. Well, the left had two reactions when that came out. One was to outright deny it. Okay, that was one. Oh, no, that's not true. That's a lie. That's a lie. Because, folks, anybody hears they took his passport as part of the raid would be an absurdity. That you would not do that, right? I mean, he's not even charged with a crime. He's not even been indicted anywhere. He's under investigation. So anybody, that were saying, no, that's not true. Then, of course, basically the Department of Justice, the FBI, I'm not sure which, had to say, look, we're sorry. Here it is, back. So those people kind of had egg on their face. Well, there was another reaction on the left, and this, I can't remember which one of these guys. I think his guy's name is Frank Fugalisi or something. He's one of these talking heads, guys who's either an attorney or a former, agent of some kind, and their whole job is to go up there and no matter what the Democrats do, spin it so it's just the most normal, absolutely proper thing you've ever seen in your life. So we're going to listen to Frank Fugalisi, or whatever his name is, from MSNBC explain, or he's apparently a former assistant FBI director, which, I mean, this is scary. But anyway, take a listen to a couple things. We're going to debunk them. But folks, when you listen to this, I want you to think, when you hear this, you don't need to have read the Constitution backwards and forwards 1,000 times like I have. You don't need to have tons of history and have read tons and thousands of books as I have. You don't need legal training. You don't need anything. Your common sense should tell you as soon as you hear this is idiotic. Now, this is important because I understand MSNBC's out there. I get it. CNN ain't far behind, and the alphabet networks aren't far behind either, right? I get your point as MSNBC's a little bit out there, but folks, this is, let's assume for the sake of the argument, this is as farthest out there you got, okay? It should never get there. It should never get close to this in America. These are absurdities. Anyway, take a listen to his explanation.
He likely had a black-covered diplomatic passport, perhaps a red government official passport. I've had these all at one time, at a time in my FBI career, and a blue tourist passport. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, he had all three and they were active and or expired. He no longer has a right to possess the diplomatic or the government official.
Okay, all right, folks, I got to be honest with you. I never heard of these three additional passports. No reason. I mean, it doesn't surprise me they exist. But, whatever. Never heard of them in my life. Okay. And he said, let's play the game. They're not expired, right? And, okay, well then, why'd they take them? See, what are you talking about? If they're not expired and he had them and he's now private, what you should be saying is, oh, it's absolutely procedure when those things you leave, even though they're not expired. Why would they run past 2021 if that's what his term was? Why wouldn't you have to renew it like anybody else? But let's set that aside. They're not expired, and somewhere along the line, if what he's saying is right, I have common sense, right? I'm not an imbecile, right? If you don't have the right to possess them anymore, why weren't they taken otherwise? You don't need an FBI raid for that. Sir, if you could turn over those passports. Oh, and although explain this to me there, Fugalisi, former assistant FBI director, why do you need to go get them on a warrant? And why was the left all over the place not coming up with this explanation you have? Oh, well, I mean, they weren't expired, but he has no longer a right to possess them, and we have no process for getting them, so we just grab them as part of a warrant. I mean, this is just imbecilic. I mean, it's not even close. It gets worse. I mean, he starts off bad, and he's picking up steam getting worse. Listen to this.
Former guy, right? So it's possible that within the four corners of the search warrant that say, hey, you can seize government records, that they seized passports that he has no right to have anymore. And
now, folks, okay, again, if he doesn't have a right to have them anymore, you please tell me the procedure of the federal government is not to go, well, a bunch of people got a bunch of these passports that we should have had them expire when their term expired, but get a warrant and go get them. That can't be the process, folks. It can't be, right? This is just beyond imbecility, okay? All right. Now, within the four corners of the warrant, I covered that yesterday, okay? And by the way, all the podcasts, you get them anywhere you get them, everywhere in God's green earth. And the YouTube, you can go up and watch them anywhere. You Rumble, you can watch them. Okay, I covered all that. All right, it was broad enough to drive a truck through. They could literally take anything they want. And again, this guy's a former FBI director, and he thinks like this. You are not supposed to be able to do this with a warrant. That's called a general warrant. That's what we left England because the king was issuing general warrants. Go raid Great American Mail's house. Take anything you want. You show up with a warrant. We have a warrant from the king. What are we looking for? Whatever we feel like. Back off. That's the way it was. That's why the Fourth Amendment was written the way it was written. You got to be specific. You got to tell me. A bunch of procedures. We went over them yesterday. It doesn't matter. Okay? So he's sitting there going, well, maybe they wrote it so broadly that he literally, what he should have said was, I would be very surprised if a judge signed off on a warrant that was that broad. I also would be surprised if they were looking specifically for the passports because it would have said it on there, and I don't know why they would be looking for passports for a reason I'm going to get to in a moment. Folks, why would the federal government be looking to get your passport? Think about that. 2 reasons they would not that are obvious to anybody. You don't even have to have ever had a passport or left the United States of America. I'll get to those 2 reasons in a minute.
With his blue tourist passport, I could see
the blue tourist passport. See, we just have blue tourist passports. We're just peons. We don't have these fancy things that he's possessed before. Anyway, it continues.
happening. This gets more complicated, though, because usually in investigations, you seize a passport when you're about to charge somebody and you're concerned they're a flight risk, or you seize a passport because it contains evidence of the crimes you're looking at. The warrant says agents can seize evidence of crimes they're looking at. What are the crimes they're looking at? Espionage? Great. So what would that mean? Well, his travel record is in his passport. Could it be possible they're looking at espionage committed while traveling? I don't know.
Okay, folks. I mean, seriously, folks. I'm embarrassed for MSCC. I'm embarrassed for this gentleman. So, folks, if you've ever traveled, especially in the USA, now, listen, if we were talking about Nicaragua, right, El Salvador, someplace like that, maybe we would be having a different conversation. But everywhere I go, they take that passport and they scan it through. So they don't need my flipping passport to know where I've been. They know where I've been. It's in the computer. In fact, now it's gotten so sophisticated. You come back into Atlanta where I do most of my traveling, and you scan the thing yourself. And you get a little thing out of the computer, and then you walk up and hand it to the person. I mean, this is moronic. Not to mention, we're not talking about the little old peon, the Great American Mail. We're talking about the President of the United States. He don't go anywhere without Secret Service. Nowhere on God's green earth. I mean, are you kidding me? Not to mention, we're talking about the President of the United States. You know where he is and where he's been. I mean, this guy, folks, I swear to God, I can just hear my mentor literally saying to me, like, I'm concerned about your ability to practice law. The fact that you even thought that gives me concern. The fact that you thought it, wrote it down, and got in front of a camera and said it, I have real concerns. All right. What's the other reason they don't need your passport, folks? Oh, he's a flight risk, is he? Oh, well, if you got the what are we, Bonnie and Clyde? What is this, like the 1800s? We're going to get on the wheel of a car and drive around and shoot people up? True. I tell you what, folks, the government decides they're going to cancel your passport, but you still got a physical copy of it. Go down to your local airport in the United States of America, anywhere else, and see if you can get in. Go give that a shot. Interpol will be on you so fast you wouldn't know what hit you. Not to mention, you're Donald flipping Trump, the former president. I mean, this is just so idiotic. Look, folks, I could spend a whole show on this. I'm already 13 minutes into this. 13 minutes to debunk something that literally they should be going bankrupt right now. People should be laughing at them. People eat this crap up. Anyway, he says one more thing, which, folks, honestly, his pension should be pulled for this. That a person that ever held any power in this country should say this. I don't get it.
I'm leaning toward the simpler answer. Your passport is not yours, by the way. It's the U.S. government's. It's a privilege to have it. They can take it back. Right. And you shouldn't have a diplomatic or...
Now, folks, he may be right on this diplomatic stuff. I'll admit, it's the first time I've heard of it. You don't have it's government property. You don't have a right to a passport. Has he ever read the Constitution? Now, again, this reminds me of Leanna Wen when she was talking about having mask mandates for getting on public transit and was out there suggesting you have no right to travel between states. And it's like, what? I mean, this is just, I mean, again, I don't know. folks, we're getting to the point where we literally are living in two different worlds in a lot of different ways. I say this all the time. Unfortunately, we're losing. We're on the Titanic. I mean, I hope that somehow it turns out different this time, but we are literally sinking daily. And the reason we're sinking, again, I know a lot of people are disagreeing with me. A lot of people out there are saying, oh, no, you don't understand. They went too far. Trump's up in the polls. They just went too far this time. You're fooling yourself, folks. They have not gone too far this time. They have gone just as far as they want. They have gotten everything they wanted. They pulled this off. They pushed this. This should have been a bridge too far, and instead there's a little bit of dust up. Their political enemies are a little bit more upset than they normally would be, but they're back to the same old game plan. Nothing's changed. It's still the same as it's ever been. And until folks, we will be on the road to redemption when you start to see people on MSNBC getting fired or dropped, or when they say stuff like this, people on the left. The fact that Fuglisi, whatever his name is, said this yesterday, right? Nobody pushed back. Nobody cared. No one is calling for his resignation. The New York Times is not going, this is crazy. I mean, what do you mean you don't have a right to a passport? I mean, this should concern all Americans. All right, folks, I'm going to move on. I've got one more bit on Warrantgate that I do want to cover. I hope I get to it. It's in the context of John Bolton. I had it in the can yesterday. If you've been following, it was the one I was going to hit, and then I jumped out of it really quickly. So it's in there. It's one other theory that I think probably is another explanation of what's really going on here. Although, again, the main thing that's going on here, folks, is that they're just seeing how far they can push it. They're fundraising, and I fully expect Trump to be indicted. They don't care. They'll let him run because they want to run against Trump. Trust me, the next two elections, 2022, 2024, they want to be referendi on the Trumpster. Trust me on that. They want that. That's the only way they win. Now, if you start to see Joe Biden out there, if you start to see Joe Biden stop being Joe Biden and start being Joe Uniting, if he starts doing that, if he starts triangulating, pulling Bill Clinton and starts vetoing a couple of these radical bills from the Democrats, or nominates a Republican or two to a judgeship or something like that, and starts unifying, they might pull back on 2024 and go, no, we don't really want to run against Trump. We're going to run on our own record. But right now, believe me, it's all about painting all of us as Nazis, and Trump does that. He's perfect branding already. So another big story out there, and if you ask me, folks, this is really the biggest story of the day. But when you're creating content, the first thing, now that I have a new intro, those of you who've been with me a long time, I used to have a little music intro. We don't have that anymore. So I got to pick a soundbite. The Raskin soundbite was perfect. There was no soundbite for this next story. I wish there were, so I couldn't lead with it. But in my view, this is the lead story. It's number 3 today, but it should be number 1. All right? Breaking. The effort to recall LADA George Gascon has failed to qualify for the ballot. All right, you may think, oh, that's no big deal. I mean, got to get a lot of signatures, didn't get them. The Registrar Records Office for LA County officially announced only 520,050 of the 715,000 signatures it collected were valid. It needed 566,857. It fell about 46,000 votes short because almost 200,000 ballots in LA County were disqualified. Okay? All right? Now, I don't know if it's legit or not. I don't really care. I don't live in LA County. It's none of my business. But I'll tell you why you should care about this, folks. If those were Democrat votes, you'd be hearing Jim Crow this, Jim Crow that. But apparently, it's perfectly acceptable to, not count 100. The actual number is 195,783. Okay? Here are the reasons. Not registered, 88,464. Don't even know what that means. Max number of times signed. Duplicates, 43,593. 43,593 people voted twice, folks. Different address. Sound familiar? 32,180. I could go on. Look, folks, again, we're losing. I'm sorry. I don't want to be negative, but listen, I don't want agreement. I don't want to hear a bunch of happy horse manure. I want the truth. The truth is we're losing. Look, I don't know what's going on here. It ought to be a huge deal. This ought to be type of situation that, whoa. We're going to get every one of the 715,833, and we're going to look through every single solitary one of them, right? Until we figure out what's going on here. The fact that it just happened, no big deal. He's not going to get recalled. Ho-hum, nothing to see here. Should concern you. All right, folks. I started covering this yesterday. And again, some of you complained, and I appreciate that. So I'm going to try to do a little bit better I still say if I do something at the end and I only give it 30 seconds or 45 seconds, the reason I'm doing that is to just make sure that you know it, because in 40 minutes I got to get you up to date with all the stories. And once I've brought it to your attention, you kind of get it. I think when I mentioned the token and the inflation stuff, you knew what we were all trying to say is that basically they have no cover for it, and now it's all out of the bag once it's been signed, of course. But anyway, so this is another story that I didn't give as much attention, so I brought it back in again today. So anyway, so this is from the Brownstone Institute, a deep dive into the CDC reversal. It was a good but bizarre day when the CDC finally reversed itself fundamentally on its messaging for 2.5 years. The source was the WMWR report of August 11th, 2022. Okay, so within the last week. The title alone shows just how deeply the about face was buried. Summary of guidance for minimizing the impact of COVID-19 on individual persons, communities, and healthcare systems, United States, August 2022. It would have been fascinating to be a fly on the wall in the brainstorming sessions that led to the title treatise. The wording was chosen to be very carefully, not to say anything false outright, much less to admit anything errors in the past, but to imply it was only possible to say these things now. As SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, continues to circulate globally, high levels of the vaccine and infection-induced community and the availability of effective treatments and prevention tools have substantially reduced the risk for medically significant COVID-19 illness and associated hospitalizations and death. These circumstances now allow public health efforts to minimize the individualized and societal health impacts of COVID-19 by focusing on sustainable measures to further reduce medically significant illness, as well as to minimize strain on the healthcare system while reducing barriers to social, educational, and economic activity. All that, folks, means, in English, as this author says, everyone can pretty much go back to normal. All right, now if you're watching us on YouTube or Rumble, basically here are the guidelines. You can see them here from NPR. Those exposed to the virus are no longer required to quarantine. Okay? That's a pretty big deal. All right. Unvaccinated people now have the same guidance as vaccinated people. Remember it's going to be a pandemic of the unvaccinated? No more. All right. Students can stay in class after being exposed to the virus. It no longer recommends to screen those without symptoms. Now, folks, why now? What has changed now? What has gone on now? Right? Well, we all know what it is. So basically, they hoaxed us for 2.5 years, and now they're going back to what they should have gone and done from the very beginning. That's basically what's going on here. And again, it comes up, it goes, and again, as this person pointed out, I don't have the Brownstone article up anymore, but as he pointed out, there's no admission of an error. There's no hey, we had the best intention. We operated in good faith, but it turns out we were wrong. Sorry about that. Anyway, folks, I said this to speaking to somebody today on another matter. I've got a lot of legal stuff going on these days, and I was talking to these people, and it's I remember reading these books, and I've read a ton of things. I mean, probably the best one that we've probably all read, we've all read, everybody's listened to me, is 1984. And I mean, I remember growing up thinking communism, was this thing where people with jackbooted thugs, walked around and had pistols and spoke in these funny accents, and that's what communism was. And then you start thinking about 1984. Well, I'm like, it seemed evil, but we're living it right now. I mean, this is the kind of thing they would do in 1984. They just did something for 2.5 years. They just completely reverse it. I mean, literally, we're done now. And it's but why in the world did you do this for so long? And why is it done now? Oh, well, there's no more elections to worry about now. There's no more bills to get through now. We got an election in less than 90 days, so we're just going to do it now. And again, the big deal here, folks, is just in those novels, you see that people just accept it and they move on. There's no penalty. There's nobody being perp walked. Nobody's even losing their job. Forget about going to jail. Nobody's even going to lose their job over this. In fact, people will get promoted, right? I mean, we are literally living 1984, and this is what it's like. And it's described in the novel. It was horrifying. Now you live in it, you go, wow, that's exactly what they talked about then and there. So anyway, just thought that should have been a bigger story, but it wasn't. So again, that would have been the second story behind the election story. So this one was in my feed. I don't know why. I still have a Yahoo email, so maybe why, I don't know. But this came up in my feed this morning. GOP slashes ads in key Senate backgrounds. And so I started to read the ad. I'm going to read, or the article. I'm going to read a little bit of it for you. And my brain started to do what they typically do. And this is under the category of, folks, it's difficult to turn your brain into the way their brain works, because we're rationally, left brain people, and they're emotional right brain people. But anyway, so as midterm election campaign heats up in the Senate's top battlegrounds, the National Republican Senatorial Committee is canceling millions of dollars of ad spending, sending GOP campaigns and operatives into a panic, and upending the committee's initial spending plan. The cuts, roughly $13.5 million since August 1st, that would be about 2 weeks, come as the Republican Senate Campaign Committee is forced to stretch every dollar we can. And a person familiar with the NRCSC's deliberations, Republican nominees in critical states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, places the GOP must defend this fall, have failed to raise enough money to get on air themselves, requiring the NRSC to make cuts elsewhere to accommodate. Since August 1st, the NRSC has cut ad buys in the battleground states of Pennsylvania, $7.5 million, Arizona, $3.5 million, Wisconsin, $2.5 million, and Nevada, $1.5 million, according to the ads tracking service GAMcast. Separately, a Democrat source tracking advertising buys estimated roughly $10.5 million in cuts by the NRSC since the first of the month. Now, I had gotten to this point in the article this morning when I was reading it, and I had I was just like, geez, I can't believe it. Man, these guys, it should be a good year for Republicans. It's 2022. It's an off year for a Democrat. The economy is terrible. The direction of the country, all the polls suggest they should be doing great, and here they are. They're flipping messing up. They can't even raise enough money. And then I caught myself, whoa, what are you talking? Wait a minute. Let's just calm down. Let's think about this. First off, it's Yahoo, which is basically the Times, the Post, MSNBC. Why would they be telling you the truth? Go back up in here. Since according to an ad tracking service, GAMcast. I don't know who they are. Never heard of them in my entire life. Right? Separately, a Democrat source tracking says, really? And then I caught myself and I said, wait a minute. You don't have any idea what's going on. You read 3 paragraphs, all make it sound like doom and gloom for the Republicans. And guess what? It might be. I don't know. It could be. It could also be that Democrats want to convince people in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Nevada, right, that, hey, we got a real chance to take that. Like, you need to keep pouring that money in. Oh, yeah, it's going good. It's going bad for them. It's going good for them. It could also be what happened to me. And again, I'm trained in this stuff. I've been spending years doing it. And I fell for it for about, I don't know, it took me about 2 minutes to read those paragraphs. I fell for it. Could be they're trying to depress the GOP. In other words, do the opposite of what it does for the Democrats. Gets them to send them money. What does it do with you? Oh, my God. I was going to send Oz some money in Pennsylvania, help him win that crucial seat. But now I hear tell they've cut $7.5 million of ad buys just since August 1st in the last 2 weeks. Man, he must be, talk about the Titanic, right? He's not even the Titanic, right? He's already at the bottom of the ocean. Anyway, so folks, if you hear that kind of stuff, just be careful. You got to always understand nowadays the news isn't meant to give you information. It's meant to propagandize. So I'm going to look into that story. I'm going to try to find out more if you can find it. But folks, you can't believe anything anymore. If they tell you it's raining outside, you best look outside for yourself. Put your hand out and make sure you feel moisture. And even then, I would check. It's like my years working in a hospital. We used to say, never, ever assume it's just water. So anyway, another story out there that, again, and this is a lot of news, folks. We're doing good. We're 28 minutes in, soon to be 29. That's good. We're going to get to them all today, it looks like, without much trouble. All right. Headline from the Huffington Post. Oh, it's a New York Post. Dadgummit. I'm sorry. I don't know how this got in here. I could have pulled it from somewhere else, but we know our rule. We typically go to left-wing sources, but we didn't in this case. It's not a left-wing source. Obviously, the New York Post. Sorry about that. I thought it was the Huffington Post. It happens to us all. White teachers would be laid off first under Minnesota teachers' contract. Now, folks, I'm not going to go through this and spend a lot of time with this. I just want you to understand, again, we prefer clarity to agreement. Folks, the modern Democrat Party is racist, period. There's no real question about that, right? They favor blacks. They favor persons of color. They disfavor whites, especially white men, but white women too, right? And so basically what's going on out there in Minneapolis, right, is that they've got a contract with the teachers. It's all union contracts, been negotiated. In the latest version, the one that's going to be approved, I don't know which, who cares, doesn't matter, is that they are going to put in ink, put in writing, that if they have to lay off teachers, first they go by color and the whites go first. All right? Now, we all know, anybody's ever been dealing with unions, and I've dealt with them a few times in my life, typically seniority is what they use. That's perfectly legal to do that. This is not only a bad idea, it's not only racist, it is flat illegal under the Civil Rights Act, and they will get sued. But here's the point. I say this all the time. They lack compunction. You need people like this if you're going to try to ruin something. You need people that will go out there and be like, oh, I know it violates the Civil Rights Act. So what? Sue me. See if we can find a judge. Oh, if that judge doesn't do what I want, we'll go up to the Court of Appeals, see what they do. And you got enough Democrat judges out there that don't care what the law is. I mean, this is the kind of thing that, again, I mean, I've said it several times today, but, this is the kind of thing that would have been reported in the news, and you would have whoever negotiated this would have been fired, and they would have said, oh, we're so sorry. No, it was a mistake. I mean, they would have set somebody out there to take the fall. Now it gets reported. Nobody cares. Anyway, Minneapolis public school teachers of color will have additional job protections this upcoming school year under a new contract that would allow them to keep their jobs rather than white instructors with more seniority. The labor agreement's intent was to protect, quote, underrepresented populations and keep the district's predominantly white staff from becoming more homogeneous, a report said Monday. About 60% of Minneapolis students are non-white, to compare to 16% of the district's tenured teachers and 27% of its probationary teachers, according to the June Minneapolis Star-Tribune report. Now, folks, it's shocking because I one of the biggest cases I ever had, may have been, let me think. It wasn't the biggest case I ever worked on, but it's pretty close. Centered around the Minneapolis suburb of Minnetonka. So I got to be honest, that's shocking that 60% of the students are non-white. I don't even know how that could possibly be. There's got to be an incredible amount of immigration going on out there, because that does not the Minneapolis that I recall seeing. But anyway, it is what it is. Folks, just imagine if it were reversed. Okay, imagine if we were to say, hey, 60% are white, but only 16 of the teachers are white. You need to fire some of these colored teachers and get us some more white teachers, because the white teachers better match the whites. Oh, that would be racist. But when they do it the other way around, not racist. Try and wrap your head around that, folks. All right, so we are back to Warrantgate. All right, so this is what I had gotten to yesterday, and I had to stop it. But it is, again, this is one of the theories that I think is going on here about Warrantgate and what's really going on. It's become increasingly clear that what they are out is not obstruction of justice, it's not national security, it's none of that. This is all over the Presidential Records Act, apparently. This is a petty dispute between petty bureaucrats over the presidential records. And you're going to see when this all shakes out, if it ever does, usually it will on our side, that basically they've got new rules for Trump than they did for Obama, than they did for Bush, than they had for Clinton, than they had for, you get the idea. And again, this is not a good thing, but that appears to be what's going on, right? In that they tried to handle it, between themselves, and the bureaucrats are really upset that Trump won't give them documents, or he thinks he should have documents because he shouldn't have them. Well, Obama walks up. Obama, please, sir, can I help you carry the box? Would you like me to go get more box? Oh, yes, sir. But if it's Trump, what are you doing? You have a document? Let me see it. That's basically what's going on. And the reason I say that is, this. So this is Robert Costa, and his tweet is, I've been following up today on something Ambassador John Bolton told CBS News in recent days, and has led to a new understanding of a part of this story, how Trump handled defense and intelligence-related documents inside the White House and how that led to an FBI search. So he then goes back, and this is an interview between him and Bolton. Take me back inside the White House when you were there. What was Trump like when he dealt with the briefings from the intelligence officials and the documents associated with those briefings? That's his question. Bolton's answer: well, on any given morning when we had an intelligence briefing, which was not every morning, he didn't read the briefing. He received it verbally, and that's fine. Different people receive information different ways. But much of the briefings were spent with Trump talking, giving his opinion on things, and whatever was the subject of the day. And I was always reminded of what Lyndon Johnson once said, which was, I don't learn very much when I'm talking. So he takes a pot shot at Trump. And again, this is consistent with what a lot of people have said, probably true. But again, you have to understand, they don't like Trump. they think he should act a certain way. Well, unfortunately, bureaucrats, unfortunately, deep state, that's not the way it works. That's why we are a constitutional republic. First, you have to understand government of the people, by the people, for the people. He's our representative. They don't want that. Government of the people, by the people, for the people? Are you insane? We're the deep state. We'll tell you how the foreign policy works. Sir, I'm John Bolton. I'll tell you what foreign policy is. You don't learn much while you're speaking, sir. You listen. I speak. Anyway, whatever. That's John Bolton's opinion. It's idiotic, but it is what it is. Here's the next one. Did you ever see him handle papers or documents with information regarding nuclear weapons? Idiotic question, but okay. Yes. In those briefings, there were occasions where that kind of information was discussed, as you might expect. And what did he do with the documents? Well, in many cases, the intelligence briefers would bring pictures or graphs or information that was useful for the president to see, and they'd hand the information to him across the desk. And often the president would say, well, can I keep this? And in my experience, the intelligence briefers most often would say, well, sir, we'd prefer to take it back, but sometimes they forgot. Anyway, so Robert Costa, who's not a journalist, but he masquerades as a journalist and thinks he's a journalist, basically has gotten John Bolton to go out there and say, yeah, we didn't like the way Trump did things, and so he might well have gotten documents he couldn't have, and we don't like that. We wish he would have listened more and talked less, and also, we prefer he not take those documents. Again, let me explain something to you. He's the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. He can do whatever he wants. You may not like that, but he's our representative, and that's the way it works. So, Bolton is full of himself. But again, you got to understand, folks, we're not part of the club. Bolton's part of the club. So the Democrats hate Trump, and Bolton hates Trump too. You'll hear him referred to as a conservative Republican all the time, right? Well, he doesn't like Trump either because Trump didn't do what he thought was the way it should go. That's part of Trump's problem. Another article here. Here's the Huffington Post. All right, here we go. John Bolton says Trump is almost certainly lying about declassifying records. Now, this is another dispute which is very close to what we just went to with Kafka. Here's the biggest dispute. You understand what's going on here, folks. What's going on here is a fundamental disagreement, quote unquote, among people in our country about what kind of country we are. What you hear from this podcast, and a lot of you have been hearing, for a little bit over a year now, right, is what I believe it should be. President Trump can do whatever he wants. And there's Supreme Court precedent as recent as 1988 saying the president can declassify anything he wants. He can literally go into a room, I declassify everything. Now, John Bolton is horrified by that. Whoever the person is that's over the presidential records is horrified by that. Not because if Obama did it or not if Clinton did it, but Trump, somebody I disagree with, shouldn't be able to do that. And we're having a fundamental disagreement over what kind of country we have because you have a lot of people here talking about, he can't just do that. Well, the Supreme Court said it. Well, the Supreme Court's a bunch of radical white supremacists, and they're wrong. They're not. Any other system leads to tyranny, right? That's the only system you can have where the people's representative can go in there and push back against this. The deep state is not who makes our policy. Anyway, here's the article. Donald Trump is almost certainly lying about declassifying records found by FBI agents last week at his Mar-a-Lago home, says John Bolton. Trump has insisted he had a standing order that everything taken to his home was automatically declassified. The law, however, requires a particular process to declassify the information. It's not clear whether Trump ever initiated such a process, nor has he offered any paperwork indicating he issued a standing order. Folks, that is called a lie. That is not the law, not even close to the law, okay? The deep state is rewriting the law. If the law is the president's got to follow a process, then he's not the commander-in-chief. And again, Congress can pass a law saying, hey, if you violate the Presidential Records Act, you're not allowed to run for federal office. There's a document out there called the Constitution that says, no, here are the qualifications for being president of the United States. Over 35 years old, natural-born citizen. See ya. Now, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment also passed the constitutional amendment, can change that anyway. So here's Bolton. So first he says there's a procedure. It's just a lie. It's wrong. And then he says, I was never briefed about any such policy when I came in. In addition, I would have heard about it later and it would have been memorialized. It's all a lie. This is what they do. They go out there, they get a Republican, somebody to come out and say something against another Republican, and thereby it makes it somehow more important. Folks, I'm going to follow the rule. I'm going to stop now. You're all really all caught up to date. I had a couple other things I was going to share with you, but they're nothing you need to know. Trust me, you're all caught up to date at this point. And if you like this live stream, I hope you'll tune back in tomorrow.